This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia, who seems to be sweating profusely right now. What's going on with you?
DJ,
Where you been?
I just walked up the stairs. It is so hot outside in Charlotte right now. I'm telling you what, man. I just walked inside from coming in the car. And I was a little busy, a little late getting here, so I was already a little nervous, a little anxious. Traffic sucks, so I'm at I'm at my all-time high. Anxiety is going. I'm yelling at people in the car to get out of the way. And I just walked from outside to inside. I'm sweating like this. Woo!
I figured it was that, or either you're going to need to tell somebody to light a match in the bathroom. I wasn't sure which one it was. And in our house, which for those who don't know, our studio is upstairs at my house. And there seems like there's always something going on. Yesterday, my wife and I were leaving to go to a meeting in Rock Hill, and we were running a few minutes late, so we got to go. And one of our dogs, the one who we talked about last week, who
have we figured this out yet?
She's doing good. She's doing good. She's doing good, but we have to walk her still because of the surgery, so she didn't break open the incision. So she's got like another day of that. But anyway, trying to get her in, and out of the corner of my eye, I see something moving, and I look, and I'm like, what? And I'll be damned if a bird didn't get in our house.
A bird?
So when my wife was letting the dogs out, a bird had gotten into our screen-in porch, and then when she opened the door and went outside, it flew in, I guess.
Damn, even the birds are trying to get out of the heat.
Yeah, it's so hot, the birds are trying to get in. So this bird's flying around. I'm trying to like swat it to get it to go back out the door. Gosh.
I hope you video.
Oh, I'm sure it's on our security camera. Then it flew upstairs. So I called Dylan, and I'm like, hey, buddy, there's a bird upstairs. I got to go. I put the dogs in my bedroom so they don't chase this bird all over the house and break everything. Can you please get this bird out? So Dylan goes and gets one of my fishing nets from outside.
Oh, God, this is an ordeal now.
And chases it around the house. And I call him later after the meeting and said, did you get the bird out? He goes, I think so. So what do you mean you think so? He goes, well, I mean, I forced it towards the door, and the door was open, but I didn't see it go out, but I haven't seen it in the house. So we get back last night, whatever time it was, and I'm expecting to see
you hear some chirping,
bird or crap everywhere laying around. But he must have got him out, because I haven't seen it since. But
I tell you what, there's nothing funnier like these American funniest videos when you see these animals getting in people's houses. Or, I remember when I was a kid, and I'm not afraid of many things. And I was a big kid, so I was at my grandmother's house, and she lives in Utah. And they lived on a little farm. My grandfather was a cowboy. He had horses. They had cows. We did a lot of stuff outside. But if you know anything about farmhouses, there's a lot of little creatures that run around. And I hate mice. And
I'm not a fan.
It was a little house mouse. And this thing came out of nowhere, and you would have thought, I don't know if you ever seen the Tom and Jerry show where the mouse comes out and Tom jumps up and just scares the living daylights out of him. And I felt like that as a kid. I jumped up, and you'd have probably heard me scream like a little girl. And I jumped up on the couch, and I was just trying to swat it away, get it away from us. And I can't stand animals in the house.
I'm 100% with you. And luckily, because we have,
I'm surprised the dogs didn't go crazy.
Well, they would have, but they were outside when the bird came in. She had left the door to the screen-in porch open, so it went in there and then in there. And thankfully they didn't see this thing, because that would have been a whole different ballgame. Well, speaking of being in the house, we come off last weekend, which was maybe the worst sports weekend of the year, right? There's nothing going on. And then even this week, you had the All-Star game of baseball, but then there's no baseball for 3 nights.
Watch?
I watched a little bit of it. I'm over All-Star games and all the All-Star
Derby has jumped the.
I'm not into any of it.
Everything about these All-Star games, not just in baseball.
No, it's every sport.
Basketball and football has become touch football.
Yeah, I can't stand them. Even the award shows for music. And I came from a background of where I've went to the CMAs every year and the ACMs. I've won an ACM award. So I was part of my business, but I hated going to those, because to me it's just a reason for rich rich celebrities to just pat themselves on the back and pat themselves.
Listen,
and then the All-Star game, they don't even compete. It's not even a fun.
Yeah.
I used to love the baseball All-Star game. And I guess it is probably the truest form of a game. But even that game now.
Well, the winner of that game gets home field advantage in the playoffs, right?
Right. But what's crazy this year, they changed the rule so they don't, if it got to extra innings, which this game did, they don't play extra innings. Each team before the game picks a guy who represents them to hit home runs, and they get X amount of pitches, and the first guy.
Oh my gosh!
And so it's almost
might as well just play paper rock scissors.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like a shootout.
Yeah.
But
you know what I would rather see like these sports do when it comes to these All-Star games, like in basketball, and or football, and or even baseball. Turn it into something fun, because I understand why they do it. It's for the fans, right? It's to get the fans to see all their favorite players out there on the field at once, but let them enjoy them doing something, maybe in their sport, like playing softball, but instead of playing softball right-handed, if you're a right-handed hitter, you have to play left-handed, right? And you have to bat left-handed, so it doesn't just become a home run derby. In football, turn it into a flag football competition, right? Put the flags on there and go play and score 100 points. Let them pull flags. Let it be competitive. And maybe in some of the other sports, in hockey, I don't know what they're going to do with that. Have a skills competition. I know they do that. And in basketball, make it a pickup game. I don't know, but something has to be done where at least it's sort of entertaining, because right now it's not even.
None of the All-Star games are what they used to be, and that's not me trying to be the old man that walked uphill both ways to school. They're just not. And you're right. If they could figure something out, or just do away with it, but this weekend, right now, we got some sports. So this weekend, if you do want to stay at home and stay out of the heat, we've got the British Open, and you can wake up early in the morning and watch it, and then you're done by 2:00, and so you can still go do whatever you want to during the afternoon. And then we've got the Panthers training camp starting Monday. So a lot of that nuclear summer that we call it, a lot of those days and weekends that you don't know what to do with yourself, we're so close to being over with that. We're going to have Charlie Nance, our golf guru, join us shortly to talk British Open and break that down and give us his picks for that. And then we're going to also be joined by Ricky Raines from Panthers on Tap, the podcast, a little later. He's been on our show many times. Great draft guy that he does, but also follows the Panthers in the NFL. And we're going to talk about some of the position battles going on and things to look for when training camps. The rookies for the Panthers report on Monday, and then I think the vets report Tuesday or Wednesday, which, as you were pointing out, is much later than what you.
Well, no, yeah, normally around this time, I remember going to training camp and sitting in there and watching as we're having lunch, the British Open, and I remember some of the comments that the guys were making. You get to hear all the different comments and the breakdowns of guys that know golf and guys that don't know golf and what they think of it, and it brings back a lot of good memories. I love this tournament because, like you said, you get up at 4:30 in the morning, turn it on. I'm a guy that gets out of bed and just kind of, I don't know if I have insomnia or not, but sometimes I'll roll over and sit there and scroll on my phone for 20 minutes and try to get back to bed. At least I can have golf, and that can put me to sleep now. So, that's something that, I do look forward to. I like this tournament, and, it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds with some of these great golfers. You expect, a guy like Scheffler to really kind of step on the gas a little bit because, just like he did at Augusta, he didn't play well a couple of times. The USO, same thing. And then all of a sudden, boom, he steps on that gas. And then when he does, it's just like he's on a different planet. He goes into that zone and looks like a robot out there and just destroys everybody in its way.
Well, he got it going today. And it looks like probably by the end of this round, he'll be at least tied for the lead. It looks like, if not leading by himself. One thing you brought up that I think is kind of interesting when you talked about watching golf when you're in training camp and some of the comments that were being made. And it made me think, so, if you've got 80 guys that are at training camp, I would believe, and I never played, the first time I played golf, I want to say I was 25 or 26. And the only reason I did it was because my old boss at the time was like, dude, you can either start playing golf or you can stay in the office while we're out playing golf, having cocktails. And I'm like, okay, I'll take that. So I would bet that if you've got 80 guys in a training camp room in the NFL, I would say the majority of them never have played golf, because a lot of the athletes you see that play golf, most of the time they take it up once they start playing in their professional sport, because they have off time. A lot of music artists are the same way, where they never play golf, but when they're on the road all the time, they'll start bringing their golf clubs because they have nothing to do during the day. And it's amazing to see how some of these great athletes, and you included, because when you retired from football, I remember you were playing golf every day, and you got to the point where, I mean, you were scratch or even what a plus
I was
one.
+3. I was +2, +3 at one point, and shooting under par a lot of times. But that being said, you realize real quickly where you stand when it comes to the big picture and your athletic ability. Is that people that say that, oh gosh, you look at you. I could have played football. I'm bigger than you. I'm faster than you. I'm strong. Whatever it might be. They don't realize all the little nuances that go into actually being a professional. Right. Same thing with golf. It's like, oh, this sport's not too hard. I can go shoot even par, go shoot 1 under, 2 under, 3 under. And then you try to do it against these guys when it counts and in competition. And, there's a huge difference between, doing it for fun and doing it for real. When it's your job, when you're living, depends on it. And I think that's the biggest difference for, these guys that are God-given ability to go out there and hit a golf ball around and, put it in a hole, and our ability to go out there and knock somebody's head off and be bigger, faster, stronger, angrier than everybody else. So I respect these guys a ton. I think a lot of those guys that you're talking about, I was one of those guys that couldn't afford to play, in college as much. I'd go out to the driving range every now and then. But, when you get into the NFL, especially in the off season, you're single, you're looking for something to do. You either go to the strip club, you go to work out, or you go to the golf, you go to the golf course. And, I didn't like giving my money away, so I like to try to win some. I wasn't doing that at strip club. So, so I chose golf, and that was something that killed time for me, each and every day.
Well, it'll be fun to watch, and the leaderboard looks pretty good right now. We've got a lot of the big names in the hunt. So hopefully Saturday and Sunday give us some compelling golf, and I hope the weather's bad to even make it more compelling. But yeah, we're gonna have Charlie Nance join us. He's our guy that comes on, talks golf, loves golf, and always has an interesting take on things. And so
I think he would have rather been a professional golfer than a radio host.
Oh, I think there's no doubt. I think he actually tries to live like he is a professional golfer.
He actually, if you asked him, he would tell you he's a professional golfer.
100%. His wife would tell you that too, because she never sees him. She never sees him. He's always at the club playing golf. All right, we'll have Charlie Nance join us in a few seconds. We're going to talk to him about the British Championship or British Open, and then we're going to have Ricky Raines on from Panthers on Top podcast, talk a little Panthers right after this. Today's show brought to you by Neogenics. Frank and I are both very familiar with neogenic stem cells. If you're not, you can check out more on neogenicstemcells.com. You can call them at 704-727-6551. That's 704-727-6551. Frank and I both have been patients at Neogenics for years, as well as Thomas Davis and Harold Varner and Matt Doherty, and we can name all the athletes and non-athletes that have gone there. I know I've had my family go there. You've had your family go there. But if you have aching joint pain, your neck, your back, your elbows, your shoulder, Frank's had your back.
I've had my back and my neck. And I tell you, for anything arthritic that you feel as a weekend warrior, they're going to be able to help you out. And the best thing about what they do at Neogenics is they're not going to give you the runaround. They're going to let you know if they can help you. Or if they can't. They're not going to try to just fluff something so that they can make money. That's the thing I really appreciate about Nico and his team is that they build championships, and they build them through honesty and integrity and hard work and commitment and all the things that we use in sports world and on these shows. They do it every day at Neogenics. They do,
and some of the competition in that field do not do it that way. And Neogenics, you're right. If they don't think they can help you, they're not going to take your money. They're going to be honest with you. I've had my elbow done there. I had a shoulder that was aching. Couldn't lift weights or play golf for probably 6 months. Went in there. They did their magic with stem cells and PRP, and within maybe 5 weeks, I was back at it. I watched them do your procedure on your back, and Frank's back had been, jacked up for years and years from playing in the NFL so many years. So any aching joint pain, they've got you. Neogenicstemcells.com, 704-727-6551.
Check them out today.
Tell them DJ and Frank sent you. Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia, and joining us now is our golf guru Charlie Nance. Charlie, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good.
You haven't been watching any golf the last day and a half, have you?
This is one of my favorite weekends, just because you can wake up in the middle of the night, which I do anyway, and there's live golf on. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I know for me, that's one of the things I found myself doing, because I'm a light sleeper as it is. And the older I get, the more times I wake up. So I go get myself a cup of coffee at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and turn it on. And if nothing else, the tournament has been about boring enough to put me back to sleep.
Well, it's funny. The opening day, Thursday morning. So I guess this would have been like midnight. And my son Connor texted me at like 1:30 in the morning, but I didn't see it until I woke up in the morning. I'd already been asleep. But he said, "Hey, Dad, what's the username and password for the Peacock app? I want to watch I want to watch a couple holes before I go to bed." And my boys are like me; they stay up late. And
that's the difference, is they're going to bed at 4:30.
Yeah,
we're getting up.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I agree. I like the fact that you get up, and even when you're working, you can have it on in the background or whatever.
Yeah.
And Frank was saying it's been kind of boring, but I'll tell you what. Number one, the rain today has been fun to watch. Watching these guys in the rain, I always enjoy watching these guys have to struggle a little bit. But the leaderboard looks pretty good so far.
Look, I with the exception of, and Frank wasn't around when I had to take the L for both of us, because when we told you there was no way JJ Spawn was going to win, and then he did. I'm going to go on another limb. There's no way anyone named Hao Tong Lee is going to wind up winning this thing at the end of the weekend. With the exception of that, I'm going to disagree too. Now, here's my thing about the Open Championship. For the most part, when it's held in England, I'm talking places like Hoylake and Royal St. George's, and those places suck. They just do. They're all burnt out. They look like they're played in a hayfield. It's just crap. But you get to this place, I fell in love with it in 2019 on television. Everyone who's been out there, I think that Portrush is a star. That course is awesome. And when you have guys, you look at the top of the leaderboard, and look at guys who even made a run as we're talking today. Bryson DeChambeau went 78-65.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got really good golfers making really good runs as we're talking right now. Matt Fitzpatrick has made a run. Scotty Scheffler, who, by the way, is going to win this thing, is doing his thing on day two, because he's doing exactly what he did at Quail. Remember, at Quail, his first day, he looked like crap, and he turned in a 3-under. He couldn't buy a fairway yesterday. Got some lucky breaks, and you turn around and, wow, Scotty was 3-under. And I just went, okay, it's Quail all over again. Everybody get ready.
Well, the thing with him is when he's making his putts, you guys know a lot more about golf than I do, but I just know that when he does putt, he seems to be able to overcome if the driver's not going where he needs it to be. It's the other way around is when he struggles. But the fact that the putts were going in yesterday, I thought the same thing. I'm like, okay, this is probably his tournament to lose.
Well, this is really the first day that we've had any weather too. So I mean, it's good to kind of see these types of conditions, because it's really the only thing that protects these courses, Charlie.
Oh yeah, wind and rain is what protects these places, and even more the wind than the rain. Because as well as I do, golfers don't care about rain; they care about wind. They can't predict it. They don't like it. They don't like what it does to their golf ball. They don't like that it gusts on them. They can't stand that. You ever get an Open Championship that's just nothing but sunshine, no wind, no rain, those guys are going to run up 30 under scores.
Well, I'm one of the lucky few guys that got to play Bandon Dunes over in Oregon when it first opened up, and now they have multiple courses there. But if you're going to go to anywhere, it's either there, Whistling Straits, somewhere in Wisconsin, that you can go and see these kind of courses. But the hardest thing for me as a golfer back then, Charlie, it wasn't the wind necessarily directly in my face or behind my back. It was the left to right. It was the crosswind, because you couldn't control. I mean, I can flight a ball to go down low into a wind and hit a club more, but how do you stop a ball from spinning once you get it going sideways?
Look, and that's why I think I know that it's the 11th hole, but I don't know what the wind direction is doing today. But all day yesterday, you saw every golfer in the world. It looked like they were throwing it 6 miles out to the left, and they were ending up in the right rough. And because that whole dog legs left to right, it requires a cut, but they can't control it into the wind. And for them, that's the scariest thing in the whole world. Golfers hate any trouble on the left. For instance, when you have at TPC Sawgrass, that 18th hole with the water on the left. If you'll notice, everybody misses way right. No one tries to go left, and it's the same thing with wind coming out of the left. Golfers hate any trouble, any danger, any problem coming out of their left side. They just don't like to deal with it.
You know, I saw an interview, speaking of the wind, with Bryson DeChambeau yesterday. I forget where it was that I saw it, but you know, he's the scientist, right? He makes his own clubs, and he's this smart science guy. And they were talking to him about the wind, and that's what he said. He goes, the wind is the problem because you can't practice for it unless. And then he had this idea about maybe putting a 400-yard
Jesus Christ
building with different wind flows in there so that he can practice against different
How
wind.
many degrees left he needs to
Yeah,
hit
no.
to go?
And at first I thought to myself, well, he's got the money to build that, and I'm sure he could get sponsors to do it, and maybe he's onto something. But my God, if you got to work that hard to figure out how to, hit it, throw some grass in the air. Isn't that how you do it?
Well, and that's why, as much as I like watching him, just because he's a crazy person, I just don't see him ever winning a British Open, because guys who win over here or over there, the majority of them are very creative field players, and they're able to adapt to different conditions. And words like feel and adapt don't compute to those who live in the calculus world.
Mhm.
They don't like variables. They like things that are if A plus B then equals C.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't work like that, they have trouble. And that's why watching Bryson just be so scientific. He had a great run today, but the reason why he played at the time of the day where there was no wind, it was sunshine. An orchid could have bloomed in Portrush.
Charlie, a lot of the golfers are mentioning, the difference between American golf and open style golf, link style golf. In America, you have to hit the ball high. You get a lot of carry. Out there, they play the ball on the ground a lot more. And a guy like Finau today said he really enjoys these types of courses because it's something that we don't get to do in America very often, is play the ball on the ground. And apparently he likes that.
Yeah, well, look, the problem is golf course architecture. For the most part, all of the courses that they play in this rota were designed at the time of the gladiators, so there wasn't a whole lot of thought put into forced carries and things like this. You get a golf course architecture in America, and it's forced carries, it's elevated greens, it's Jack Nicklaus designs every course he has. You can't run up a shot on a Jack Nicklaus green. There's always a bunker in front, a water hazard in front. It's elevated in front. It's just American golf course design, whereas over there you have options. And also the ground is just so damn hard. Someone was asking me the other day, is it really that hard? I said, okay, do you think your driveway is hard? They said, yes. I said, okay, now after your driveway gets 2 inches of rain on it, is your driveway still hard? They said, yeah. I said, that's exactly what it is over there.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, you do see the rollouts that these guys get, and
well, even when with the rain, like to Charlie's point, the ball's still rolling down the fairways.
Yeah,
it's literally like a driveway, and that's why you see guys distance, whereas over here distance on a golf course makes a huge difference. There's some golf courses that just the Brian Harmons of the world don't have a chance to play on. Distance is sort of nullified on these courses because of the runouts, and that's why you can have guys like Fleetwood and Harmon and guys who are not big hitters do really well.
You were bringing up touch and creativity, which how that bodes well in this
Something
tournament.
You know a lot of, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of that. I got a lot of both of those. Way too much sometimes. But watching Phil Mickelson yesterday, and he's a guy that's known for great touch around the greens, creativity, all those things. And I've never been a huge Phil fan, but it was kind of nice these last couple of days to see him play well. I think he finished maybe +1.
He's -1 yesterday.
-1, and then today I think maybe he was +1 or even. But anyway, I think he's got a chance to make the cut. It looks like, which will be pretty cool. But yeah, this kind of course sets up nicely, even for an old fellow like Phil.
Well, and Phil, there in a way you can draw a comparison with Bryson. Phil was so stubborn for so many years, saying, "I'm Phil F. Mickelson, and I play my way, and I'm going to show you that I don't care about how old these golf courses are, your links golf. I'm going to play Phil Mickelson golf and I'm going to get it done. And it wasn't until he finally gave in and said, okay, all right, I give. I'm going to try to do it your way. And then look what he did. He wound up winning at Muirfield Village in 13 and then almost won another time. That great standoff, I guess it was at Troon, that great shootout he had on Sunday there a few years ago. But, Bryson is going to eventually have to reach that point where he just sort of throws his hands in the air and says, okay, I'll try it your way. And when that happens, we'll see what happens.
Charlie, this golf course, it seems to be, if you look at, the AI, visuals of people's faces now, you can make them as smooth as glass. This golf course looks like it has acne everywhere because even the greens are little holes and valleys and peaks. And it's literally like you just have to get lucky sometimes to get the right break. You can hit a perfect shot and hit the wrong slope of a green and it just takes it off the planet.
Yeah. I was talking with someone about chipping under these greens and, because they're running because of the conditions where you get those high winds. Those greens can't be cut down to 12 and a half, 13 and a half like we do over here. You wouldn't be able to even mark your ball. It would just be rolling all over the place. So they have to keep them consistently somewhere between 10 and 11, which to these guys might as well be putting through shag carpet.
Yeah.
But the greens are so firm that normally if you have a green that's that shaggy, that's running a 10, won't release out. I mean, they just stop. It's like Velcro. But these are so firm that you still have the bounce and the rollout, which is kind of what makes it so fascinating to me. And I guess to you too, Frank, speaking to your point, that even with as quote unquote slow as they are, it's not necessarily the speed, but the undulation that you have to be wary of because it's going to just do crazy things to your golf ball.
And you mentioned that you think Scheffler is going to win the thing,
Yes.
and as to why, but who else do you think are going to be there this weekend? Matt Fitzpatrick's obviously playing great right now. It's funny. I'm in a golf pool every major with a bunch of buddies, and I was doing this one, and I came down to trying to choose. It was between Fitzpatrick and I think McIntyre, not Rory, but the other one.
Robert,
and who's playing well, but this is the one time I don't take Fitzpatrick, and he's lighting it up. And of course, 3 or 4 of the other guys have him. I think he's at 10 under today and in first place. But he's won a major before, right?
Oh yeah, Matty Fitz won the U.S. Open at Brookline a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's right. So it's not like he's probably going to fade. And even your boy Spawn is 2 under. He was a little shaky yesterday, but today he's got the putter working a little better, and he's in the hunt. It'll be fun to see him there on Sunday.
Well, another guy to watch, and I liked him at the U.S. Open as well, and he just got into a rough spot as everybody did on that last day. We haven't had a live golfer win this year, and every year we've had a live golfer win a major. And Tyrrell Hatton is a really, really, really good golfer and plays these courses really well. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Hatton is right in the mix on Sunday.
Well, and he fits right in. He's an angry little leprechaun, so he fits right in with the culture there.
Tremendous.
Well, I bet you this wind that you golfers are talking about that's just so dangerous and tough. I bet he doesn't bother him as much. He's a tough, angry little man, and I think that's why I did actually pick him in the first tier as my guy.
He reminds you of yourself.
Exactly. I wonder if I'm taller than him, though. I'm definitely, I think, maybe skinnier a little bit, but and I bet you I could probably beat him in a Jameson drinking contest. Maybe not.
I don't know.
I'll tell you a story about him. A friend of my son's who played junior golf with my son is a kid named Caleb Surratt. And Caleb plays on the Live Tour with Tyrrell and with John Rahm on John Rahm's team. And he's told me, number one, that this is the guy, if you're ever playing a round of golf, you want to play with because he's so preposterously and over-the-top self-deprecating and just foul to himself that you would be laughing the whole time. And 2, this is a true story. So Caleb's first event is overseas with Liv, and then the next week they're in Vegas. And Caleb at the time was 20. And he had just turned he was almost turning 21. Well, anyway, he goes to check into a hotel in Vegas. Well, he's 20. And that ain't happening.
Yeah.
And so he's like, Jesus, what am I going to do? And Tyrrell happened to be right behind him. and Tyrrell all of a sudden claimed to be his stepfather and stepped up and got him checked into the hotel. And so now they have a policy wherever they are in the world, if it's age restricted checking into hotels, all of a sudden Tyrrell Hatton's his stepfather.
Well, John Rahm, I was watching earlier, and you like watching John Rahm because you never know when he's just going to lose his cool and go crazy. And today he hit a monster drive. It was a par 4. I forget what hole. He had 120 left into the hole, but it was windy and rainy or whatever. And he pulls it to the left, and right away, right when he hits it, he drops his club in anger. Of course, the ball hits like off the back, rolls back, and he's probably 15 feet from the hole. Like, it ended up being pretty good. But I'm thinking, okay, he dropped the club in anger. He just saw his ball land. He got lucky. It took a nice kick. He walks up I think he's going to pick his club up, and he kicks it. And I'm like, oh, okay, he's mad. And then he goes, I said, now he's going to pick it up. And he kicks it again. And I'm like,
he didn't hear it the first time.
Yeah, they didn't
That's
hear it the
right.
first time. And he kicks it 2 times. Finally, the caddy gets in there and grabs it. And I'm like, my God, like you've got a 15-foot birdie putt. Like, could it have been closer? Sure. But you shanked one and you got lucky. Calm down, Johnny.
Yeah, well, these guys are so so pinpoint accurate that they don't want to get lucky. They want to be good to know that the next shot that they hit is going to be exactly where they want to hit it. So I understand the frustration. But speaking about Rahm, Charlie's that from tee to green. In the last 3 or 4 tournaments he's played in, at least the majors that I've seen him, he's been as good as anybody on the course, but he has not been able to putt to save his life. At least they're not going in. He's around the hole a lot, but they're not dropping. What's going on with his putter?
Look, you said it best. For 3.5 rounds at Quail Hollow, he was right there. In fact, I believe for a cup of coffee, he actually had the lead on Sunday at Quail at the PGA at the 9th hole or maybe the 10th hole. I don't remember as much about his win at Augusta putting wise as much as I remember when he won at Torrey Pines in the U.S. Open. I just remember he seemed to make, and you know this, Frank, and you do too, DJ, the putts that right-handed golfers hate the most is anything that has break from left to right. Okay, it's just hard for us to read. It seemed that Rahm got on a run and made every damn left to right putt from 12 to 15 feet at Torrey Pines, and that's how he won that golf tournament. And I just haven't seen him outside of, the first 3.5 rounds at Quail. I haven't seen him in a major sense where he got over that putt and you just felt like he was going to make it. And I don't think he feels like he's going to make it.
Yeah, when you said that right-handed golfers don't like that left to right break, and I know I don't like it, but is it because we just don't make ourselves hit it far enough out? Like, does it normally miss short to the right, or is it one of those things?
I think there's a lot of different theories of why, and I may tend to agree, but also disagree a little bit. I think that people that hit left to right putts, if you play the ball left to right, you're used to seeing that shape, that formation. It fits your eye
That's
a little
true.
differently.
That's true.
If you're a right, if most people are a tendency to hit the ball with a little bit of right to left, so that left to right putt is out of the norm for them. So you don't know how far to break. You usually put top spin on the ball. If you're a right to left, your putting stroke kind of resembles your natural stroke. So those are a lot of different reasons why, but I would agree with Charlie. The biggest reason why is just because it doesn't fit our eyes very well, and that follow through, you just don't know where to start.
Well, you just explained something to me. I just learned something now, is that the best part of my golf game is I'm usually a pretty good putter, and the reason is because when the rest of my game I tend to hit the ball to the left and the right, so I have eyes for both of those. There's no rhyme or reason to where it's going.
So go straight.
I can read both. I can go left. I can go right.
Now, the most important question about John Rahm is this: who has a bigger dumper, him or Cal Raleigh?
Well, dude, I'm gonna have to go Cal Raleigh on that one, and I bet you Cal Raleigh can hit the golf ball with left-handed clubs as well as right-handed clubs. After the show he's putting on, not only this year but in the All-Star game the other night. But yeah, Rahm's got a little similar build to him. He's got that kind of build going on. All right, so give us. You got Scheffler as your leader or as your winner. You mentioned Hatton as a guy to keep an eye on. Give us a few more guys that you think could be there on Sunday, when this thing, and I don't know, what time will the last groups go off on Sunday morning?
They'll go off about 10 or 11. I mean, it'll wrap up about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon over here.
Nice.
I tell you, you know what? I made the mistake of talking bad about this guy a few years ago, but he's showing it to me again. Do not go to sleep on Brian Harmon. That guy appears to know what he's doing. I tell you who else kind of came out of nowhere, and I was talking with Ron Green of the Global Golf Post this week, and he picked Harris English. I mean, just came right out
Playing
and
good
said it.
too.
And then what? Lo and behold, Harris English looked awesome today.
Yeah.
So look for a Georgia contingent between Harris
And
English and Brian Harmon.
and hasn't Harmon won a major as well?
British
Two,
Open.
2 years ago, he won the Open at Royal St. George's.
Yeah. So, and is that because what you said earlier, like, is he not a long hitter? So in this case, that doesn't hurt
Doesn't
him.
matter.
Yeah.
Right. And he's because he's a shorter guy. He's always had just a dirty short game. And, he's very creative around the greens, and he's a really, really, really good putter.
And he plays this little knockdown shot as well as anybody. Very similar to what Justin Leonard used to do playing out of Texas. Learning how to hit the ball low. So it just fits his game. It fits his eye, and it fits his creativity to a T. But Charlie, I think before we let you go, one of the biggest concerns, you said it was going to be about a 4.5 hour round, has been the delays and the time and the backups that they've had here. Is that due to just the weather? Is it the shape of the course? Is it how some par fives back up to par threes and the gettables, the gettable par fives? Everybody's waiting. It just seems like there's been a lot of guys on the clock, and it's frustrated a lot of players over the week.
Well, that's no different than over here. One of the banes of my existence with golf course architecture is when you have reachable par fives that are immediately followed by par threes. You are just asking for backups. And even, what's even worse is if you have a reachable par five with a par three in front of it. So that's a problem. Also, Frank, they're having to look for more golf balls than they normally do. These people are hitting golf balls in the middle of gorse bushes and things that look like a set piece from the Game of Thrones. I mean, you can't find anything. So they're having to look a little bit more. And then also, like I watched Tommy Fleetwood today hit one up against the fence, and normally he would just take a drop, hit it, no big deal. But because of the wind and the rain started coming down, and then he's trying to find a spot that is still legal within that club and stance to drop and not drop it to the bottom of the earth. It just took longer for him to do a drop than it normally would, and that's just part of the conditions.
See, I thought it was just the English over there that are like the guys that are just so pretentious that they think golf exists around them.
That's pretty much all of them, isn't it?
Well, the officials seem to be the king, the king of the castle, and they want to rule on everything over here.
Well, it's funny that I've also seen two guys actually whiff shots in this tournament too. Bryson did it on Thursday, and I think Lowry did it today, where they just totally swung and missed. So, Charlie, tell everybody before they go where they can find you. I know you Charlie does great work online, not only but also at WSOC 1037 WSOC. Tell them where they can find you.
Okay, I'm everywhere now. My wife and I are doing our 20th year afternoon drive at 103.7 WSOC Country 1037 here in Charlotte. That's weekday afternoons from 3 to 7. We host a nationally syndicated countdown show, Back Then Again Country Countdown, with Kyle Petty. That is on Sunday mornings at 7 o'clock. Taking Dead Aim is my golf project, my golf podcast that you can get anywhere you download your podcast. And I think I'm going to wash my wife's car later, so you could find me there.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing is after 20 years is that they work together and they're still married.
Yeah, but I heard that the guy that hired you I've heard rumors that the guy that hired you was not only very, very good looking and sexy, but brilliant beyond his years. And that's just a rumor I've heard.
Well, that is strictly a rumor. The one thing I will say about the whole being married and working, someone asked me this not long ago, how are you able to do it? And I said, I think it was our second or third contract here in Charlotte was coming time, and we had dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and our agent got on the phone with us and was going over it with us and said, hey, look, you two, we really hadn't talked about this, but you need to stay married. And we looked at each other. We're like, what? She says, I don't know if you've seen this lady's contract from CBS, but it's a hell of a lot easier for y'all to get out of being married than it is for y'all to get out of working together. So you might as well stay married.
Well, it's turned out good on both sides of that. Thank God.
I am a little upset that you guys didn't tell me I could say this thing. I've been trying to keep
trust me.
He immediately bleeped it right off.
Yeah, Big Dylan will be editing that out because of our TV presence.
I saw him jump.
Yeah, it can live in the podcast world, but it can't live on the TV world, unfortunately. Because if it did, I wouldn't have to think so much about what I'm going to say and what I'm not going to say. Because you know how hard it is for me to get through an hour or 2 hour show without dropping F-bombs? It's almost impossible.
Oh, look, you know how focused I've been for the last 20 minutes?
Yeah. It's like, my God, man. That's why I was telling Frank, we have to start doing like suit up after dark. Yeah. And then we can just go in and just rip whatever we want to rip and talk how we talk. But Charlie, thank you for joining us. And we'll get you on next week too, just to kind of break it down. Last major of the year, which kind of is sad, but the good news is football is right around the corner. And, training camp with the Panthers starting next week, which we're going to talk to Ricky Raines from Panthers on Tap coming up soon. But Charlie, thank you. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys.
See you, buddy.
Yep.
It's time to suit up. Here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Big Dylan over there on the board for us. And joining us now, Ricky Raines, co-host of Panthers on Tap. Ricky, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing today?
Good, man. It's the weekend. We've got golf on. It's raining on these guys. It's windy, which is a challenge for them. So I like to watch it. And best yet, Panthers hit training camp on Monday. You got to be fired up.
Right around the corner, man. I can't stop talking about it. I think that we've got some really fun position battles too that are going to kind of shake out throughout camp. A lot of excitement around Charlotte about this Carolina Panthers team. So, man, I'm excited about it.
What is the thing that you're most excited about? Because I think for me, Ricky, is that, the offensive line has solidified itself. Hopefully some continuity will develop there. It feels like this team has kind of stripped everything back and has started to get the foundation with the offensive line. They've got the defensive line, or at least they got the foundation for that. So with what we hope is going to be. But for me, it's the quarterback position. I think I need to see this guy really come out of the gate strong and improve off of what he did last year, not take 3 steps back and wait till half the season for him to show up.
Sure. I think that that's a good point. When I spoke about this on our show on Panthers on Tap, I talked about Bryce Young, and I said, he had to climb out of a hole just to get back to like ground level. And then he actually started ascending up the ladder a little bit as well. But what he has to do this season is he has to start on that same rung that he left off on. He cannot go back down and then have to climb again. I have a pretty high level of confidence in Bryce Young this season, to be honest. I think that he's going to do it. I think that he remembered who he was. I think he showed everybody else that he knows who he was. Yeah. For me, though, what I'm really excited about, Frank, the position battles of like linebacker and safety and cornerback, where there's a lot of interchangeability between some of these players. And I think that what they did with the roster, especially bringing in depth players, was very intentional. And you've got some skill sets and some players that are reminiscent of each other. And so there's going to be an actual competition to see which one of them is just playing better and who's going to go and win that job. And you're going to field the best 53 at opening day. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Dan has done a great job in the last 2 years of especially this past offseason, of just creating depth and doing it the right way. Let's start with the linebackers, because I know everyone that's a Panther fan is a little worried about linebackers. I know Frank has talked about it quite a bit. They bring in Roseboom from the Rams, Jewel hopefully back healthy. The rookie Wallace last year out of Kentucky, got thrown into a starting role earlier than anyone, anticipated happening when Shaq Thompson got hurt, and it had a solid rookie season. We had Brenton Buckner on the show a few weeks ago, and one of the things he talked about, when Frank asked him about the linebacker crew, was that a lot of times on a team, but linebackers specifically, and he gave us some examples of his teams he had played on. a kid will come out of nowhere and that they see in practice and they might think he's really fast or he's really tough, but they don't know how he'll handle game situations and how mentally they'll handle it. And then all of a sudden somebody comes out of the blue. Will Witherspoon was a guy that he uses as an example when he got thrown into the mix.
For Mark Fields, that's right.
Yeah. And so who in this linebacker crew are you excited about, or maybe as a guy that could be that guy that comes out of nowhere and 6 weeks into the season we're going, man, where the heck do we find this dude?
Well, I feel like Trevin Wallace is just the ultimate wild card almost for the entire defense to an extent, because they drafted him in the 3rd round, which doesn't seem like a high draft capital allocation to give to a player. But for linebackers, it's a position that doesn't hold the same value traditionally any longer. Like in the front offices, they're not giving them 1st-round grades. So for a guy like him, who was the number 1 rated linebacker in his class by some of the really highly thought of draft analysts, right? Like Dane Brugler had him as his number 1. This is a very traitsy, toolsy player. He's extremely fast. He plays with a really violent nature. He finishes with intensity and purpose. But he didn't have – you guys mentioned it. He got thrown into that situation and also had the green dot on the back of his helmet. It wasn't just that he was back there. He was a communicator, right? He was the field general on that defense. He wasn't ready for that. This is a guy who has to show that the processing in the game slowed down a little bit for him, because he's a read and react guy right now, but the reaction time wasn't there where it needed to be. Once his body and his brain get to be on that same level, I do think that he has the ability, but is he going to be there this year? If not, then I think you will see Christian Roseboom absolutely step up, and he's going to be a steady pace for the linebacker room with Josie Jewell. There's nothing overly dynamic about either of them, but these are hardworking players that are going to play the right way. They're going to play fundamentally sound. They're just not overly dynamic ball players.
A lot of times as a player, it's important that we work within a system, but it's also important that we are playing free and able to overcome coaching. And what I mean by that is a lot of times players are put into a system, and when you have players that are capable of playing outside that system but still making plays, for example, a guy like Warren Sapp, you aren't going to sit here and say, hey, you're going to play a 3 technique and you're just going to, run stuff this guy. You're going to be able to improvise a little bit. Is Derek Brown going to be a guy that we can maybe utilize a little bit more to go be disruptive up front, that a coach is going to allow him to, for all the good that he's going to bring to maybe overcome and make that play? Or is it because of the linebacker depth would scare me that we want these guys to be in the right place at the right time because we know we don't trust our linebackers? What should we expect more from this defense?
It's a good point. And it's one of those things, right? Like if you have a Maserati, you got all those horses and no room to gallop, right? Like you want to be able to find these guys to be able to do what they're great at and not have them inhibited by maybe like compensating for the players behind or in front of them, right? Or just for the scheme. Well, what they did on that defensive front by bringing in Bobby Brown, by bringing in Turk Wharton, by keeping Ashawn, right? They're going to allow Derek to do more of what he can do really well, I think. We've asked him to play nose in the past, and that's almost just because we didn't have an actual nose on the roster. Now you got 2 or 3 guys that can rotate, and they talked about playing the platoons. They're going to do that. But that's going to allow some freedom and a little bit of like aggressiveness, I think, from some of these players like a Derek Brown, right? I even think that with the secondary, what they did with Trayvon Merrick at safety is going to allow Jason Bourne to have a little bit more freedom and a little bit of flexibility in what they could do. You might see him being used more as a blitzer. You talk about wanting to get after the quarterback and making life uncomfortable. Derek Brown, J.C. Horn kind of doing a little bit of different things as far as rushing and getting after them in different alignments. I do think that you're going to see Evero open it up a little bit more with having more talent on the field.
Let's talk about the DBs, because I think you're totally right with the defensive line, and hopefully that defensive line will help the linebackers by keeping the offensive line off of them within about 1 second, like it seemed to happen last year. But let's go to the DBs, because we know J.C. Horn's going to be here for a while. They re-signed Michael Jackson, who was a great trade they made right before the season started last year. Wade, the rookie out of Oregon State, I think in the 5th round last year, had a good rookie season, ended up starting the slot before he got hurt. And a lot of people in the OTA say that he looked better than anybody out there. What do you think shakes down in the DB? So I remember Damian Richardson too, an undrafted free agent last year, who I like a lot. They say he's going to get a shot maybe to earn a starting spot at safety. What do you think unfolds there?
Yeah, you named Shaw Smith-Wade, kid that played at Washington State, and he had never played in the nickel position inside before. Everything he took was a boundary position at Washington State. But then he went to the Senior Bowl, where they tried him out at nickel because of his, stature. He's about 5'10", 195 pounds. And they said, well, look, man, you'd be great inside. He's got a good physical nature. He likes tackling. He's not afraid of it. But he's got the hips to be able to turn both ways, right? He doesn't have to have the boundary as his friend, as a safety net. He's going to be a wild card back there. They said that he was even taking some reps at safety in some of these OTA looks.
Yeah.
I think that Evero, and there's a thing that's happening in the NFL where teams, Steve Spagnuolo is really doing this in Kansas City. They're playing 3 safeties. They're giving you 3 safety looks, right? Like some of these nickel corners are now lining up at safeties and they're rotating post snap. That's going to be a thing I think you see. You mentioned Damani Richardson. They like him, but does Damani have the athleticism to cover the deep third, right? Is he going to be your free safety? Devon has the ability to play both safety positions, but they also really like him up in the box and close to the line of scrimmage. That's where he's a disruptive player. That's where he creates a lot of his havoc. So I think that you're going to see some changing around between Damani Richardson, Lathan Ransom, the rookie out of Ohio State. They like him. Dan Morgan speaks glowingly of this guy's ability, and he made a point of going out and getting him when there were some other safeties still on the board that they had been connected to.
Yeah.
So I think that they've got plans. I think that they're intentional about what they're doing. Shaw Smith-Wade is absolutely the big difference maker, I think, in that defensive back room. Mike Jackson's steady. You know what he's going to be. J.C. Horn's tremendous. But if Shaw Smith can take that next step and really solidify that nickel position, you're going to see some fun things out of this defense.
If he can't, who's behind him that could? Because that makes me nervous. And hopefully he does, and he did show flashes. But if he doesn't, on the roster right now, is there somebody we can trust, or is that going to be somebody they do what they did last year and pick somebody up during training camp?
I don't like to speak poorly on any professional athlete because I'm not one. I'm an accountant by trade, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say that none of them are good. They're all terrific football players. Yeah. But if you had to look at it right now, MJ Devonshire is the guy that they just picked up from the Las Vegas Raiders when they cut him. That's a guy that has experience. He's got the ball hawking tendencies. He had 7 interceptions his final season at Pitt in college before being drafted in the 7th round. But he's a guy that has not played a whole lot. Now, can he make a little bit of noise in training camp? Can he kind of solidify the backup role there? It's possible, but I think what's even more likely is that if they are uncomfortable with what they see with Shaw Smith-Wade and they don't feel good about that, you're going to see a lot of what you saw last year, where that bottom of that cornerback room is really churned over in some of these cuts, right? When you have that big cut, because cuts are different in the NFL nowadays than what they used to be. There's not 3 different rounds of cuts. You got one big cut to get down to that number. So you're going to see some players fall off that maybe you didn't expect, and I would anticipate the Panthers being active.
Ricky, let's move to the offensive side, and I think I'm probably most fascinated, with this offense to kind of see what their identity is going to be. I think Bill Belichick's biggest strength was formationally and situationally creating advantages for the offense, and he did it better than anybody else. But it was because he had a quarterback that was able to process and know what was going to happen before the play happened. He knew where his players are going to be before the play developed, because he understood defenses maybe as well as anybody ever in the entire history of the NFL. Him and Peyton Manning were on a different level. Is Bryce Young going to be that guy that is able to, if these teams get into a certain formation and they create a mismatch, with their formation, they're going to be able to take advantage of that? Is Bryce going to be able to be that cerebral quarterback, now having this, same coordinator for another year, being on the same page, and an extension of the head coach, out there on the field, or the coordinator out there on the field? Is he going to be able to utilize his players? Because I think there's so many different packages the Panthers can use. And I think that was one of the things by getting a Ted McMillan that they were able to do is, go out there and create size, matchups versus, defenses, as well as with Thielen, have that shake route where you can beat guys one-on-one. And, very similar to what Wes Welker, Damian Woodhead would do, for the Patriots. Are the Panthers going to be able to utilize that because of Bryce Young?
Yeah, I think so. And what's encouraging to me in that regard is when you look at the pressure numbers, right? Like Bryce Young last season in week 8 and beyond, when there was pressure, that's showing a quick recognition of what he's seeing and having an idea of where his leverage is, right? As a quarterback. That is a really big indicator of a guy who's understanding and grasping the offense. And then you hear Dave Canales in the offseason, he talks about, he's like, we're excited to take the next step with this offense. We're excited to open things up for this offense. I think that all of that to me just sounds like code words for trust. We trust Bryce Young to be able to execute what he's seeing on the field.
Well, you're absolutely right, because I remember Bill Polian and Dom Capers, with our offensive coordinator at the time, Joe Pendry, with Kerry Collins as a young player, coming into the league and understanding that we were going to run the football, we were going to be a 3 yards, play great defense, punt, play, kick is a good play, right?
Right.
That was our philosophy, but we also knew there was going to be a time and place where we needed Kerry to open up the offense in order to beat some of these elite teams like the San Francisco 49ers or the Green Bay Packers, in the NFC Championship game. There was going to be a time where we have to take the reins off, and just let them go play.
Yeah. It's one of those things, right? You take what the defense gives you. That's what a smart player will do. You take the easy, the right, the correct play. But sometimes you also have to force a defense to give you a shot. Right? Like you need to force them and facilitate these deep shots. And they didn't have to do that with Bryce Young a lot in his rookie season. They didn't have to do it in the first 2 weeks of last season. But you look at like some of those later weeks, right? Look what he did against the Chiefs and that Steve Spagnuolo defense. It's really impressive stuff because he took shots down the field. Bryce was throwing the ball more than 20 yards down the field, way more than half of the NFL starters in the league towards the end of the year. He's not afraid of doing it. But then when you give him a Teteroa McMillan, right, where a defense now has to respect, they have to keep coverage over the top for him. If you give him one-on-one with a cornerback, Bryce Young's a smart dude and he's a confident dude. He's going to give him that shot one-on-one with his 6'4" dynamic receiver over there, right?
Yeah.
But then if you have to account for, just like you said, Frank, Adam Thielen one-on-one in the slot. If you don't have that safety help down there and you have to leave him alone with somebody, and Adam Thielen, as crafty of a route runner as he is, that's going to give you a world of trouble. And we haven't even talked about the 6'2", 225-pound muscle man who could run a 4.40 and Xavier Legette. You get him on some of these crossers and drag routes and get him into space. Man, it could be a very dynamic and dangerous offense that Panthers fans haven't seen in a good bit.
Yeah, the wide receiver room is actually what I wanted to talk about next because, number one, it's as dynamic and as different of a room as they've had in a long, long time. Back-to-back years, they spend their number one picks on receivers, right? So trying to give Bryce the weapons that he needs. Legette, I would say, had, a solid rookie season. There was ups and downs for sure. Some big catches, great in the red zone, some big drops and think, the wrist injury, whatever. Then they draft another one with T-Mac this year. But the guys that I really find interesting, and this one in particular, because there's so much hate, it seems, on social media for Hunter Renfrow. And it's so funny to me that everyone's hating on him so much when all the Panthers did were just give a guy who was a Pro Bowler a chance to come play. If he makes a team, great. If he doesn't, no harm, no foul. Yet people are acting like, he's going to come take Horns, the kid that people seem to think is going to be the battle there, which I'm not sure that's 100% the case. And what I want to say to them is, who knows if Renfrow is going to be the same guy that he was before he sat out a year. But if he is, why are you worried about who is the casualty that falls for him to make this team, whether it's Moore or whoever? But they've got a lot of depth in there, and they got speed in there. They have height in there. And then they got, like you said, crafty guy like Thielen that knows where to be, get open and catch it. And then maybe a Renfrow does. And look, I'm as excited to see Horn as anybody. I hope the kid comes in and lights the league on fire. But let's just be happy we have some depth and see how it unfolds.
Well, you used a particular wording, right? And you said they're worried about taking somebody's job. Well, guess what? If somebody comes in OTAs and training camps and they beat somebody else out, you should be happy about that because they got rid of a lesser player on your team.
Exactly.
Now, I agree with what you're saying about Jimmy Horn Jr. not necessarily being a direct competition for Hunter Renfrow because I think they're completely different usages, right? Mm-hmm. Jimmy Horn Jr., I think he's more of a lock for this roster than some people give him credit for because I think his special teams contribution as a punt returner, as a kick returner, as the gadget guy. You saw Dave Canales really like Devin Tompkins that he brought with him from Tampa Bay, try to use him on those orbit motions, right? Like get him out in space, the eye candy on those pre-snap motions. That was what he wanted to do with that guy. That's what Jimmy Horn Jr. can still give you the same threat as a receiver, but he's got a little bit more game to him, I think. I think that they're going to want to get him incorporated, even if it's just a small package each game. But Hunter Renfrow, look, man, if he comes out and he beats out David Moore's a glue guy. He's big for this locker room. He's a Canales guy. And if Hunter comes in and makes them make that tough business decision that David Moore is the one that gets chopped for him, that means that Hunter Renfrow showed something. And
I
I
agree.
am 100% behind keeping guys that show signs of life in that locker room.
100%.
Last time we talked, Ricky, is that we were, I think, kindred spirits on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And, I think that all these fancy, fun things that we're talking about are all great if the offensive line can hold together.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest concern about this offensive line is probably one of the more talented players we have. I don't know if he's in the right position, however, but he is what we have to go forward with. And I'm talking about Ike Ekwonu, at the left tackle position. I think it takes a couple of years before you understand how to play offensive line at this level, because you're not just stopping the first guy, the first move from the guy, you're stopping a second, and you're trying to stop his second and third move. And when you get to the elite level, you throw athleticism in the swing. He doesn't have that prototypical, left tackle body. He has to make up for it with his athleticism. And I don't think he's really maybe lived up to expectations as a first round pick in the last. Are we expecting more from him this year?
So I love a couple things you said there, Frank, and you're right. These are the conversations that I really enjoy, is being able to talk about the hog mollies up front. It's really boring to everybody else, but this makes it tick, man. Like, this is the thing that gives you protection for your quarterback, the guy that opens up those lanes for your running back. Doesn't matter how good either of those positions are. If they're not getting holes opened up for them, or they're not getting time to execute, it's not going to work. But what you said about Ike is something that I have stressed personally as well with Ike, is that when he came in, this was a really high recruit, right? Out of Providence Day, I believe. And he went and he played at NC State. This is a guy that is a very big time athlete. He was always stronger than everybody that he was lined up against. He was just better physically than all of them. He didn't have to have that mental aspect of his game, or at least not as much of it. He's a very smart, intelligent dude. You hear him speak. He understands the game of football. He has all of the knowledge that he needs. But implementing the plan, right? We always talk about like a pass rush plan as far as an edge rusher, right? There's also a pass protection plan for these offensive tackles with secondaries and counters. You have to be able to know that if you do get beat off that first move, it's going to happen. Like that is part of the game. But how do you adjust? How do you recover? And that's a really big part of it. Ike was not good at that at all in his first 2 seasons. I'll just be blunt about that. He was not good. He lunged a lot. He guessed a lot, and that put him behind the 8 ball. What I did see last year, and we just talked about this with Trevin Wallace, is getting the top part to match the body, right?
Yeah.
Like getting the brain to match the legs and the body. That's what I did see with Ike in the latter portion of last season. It slowed down a little bit for him, in my opinion. And I think that when he's starting to show that he's not being overly aggressive and trying to use that mauling brute force that he does withhold, I think when you see him being a little bit more tactful, that is Joe Gilbert, first of all, the offensive line coach, doing a phenomenal job teaching this guy the way. But it also doesn't hurt having Damian Lewis playing next to you instead of Calvin Throckmorton. No offense to Calvin Throckmorton, right?
True.
But then Robert Hunt, Taylor Moton, and Frank, you talked about at the beginning, the continuity being a huge thing in offensive line. Bring back all 5 starters. We don't know who's going to be the center, right? It's either going to be Austin Corbett or Cade Mays. But all 5 of those guys know each other, and they play with each other in the same scheme.
Ricky, it's interesting. People maybe not understand the importance of having a good position coach and what he can mean, to a player at that position in particular, especially offensive line.
Yeah.
I learned so much from a guy named Jim McNally in my first 5 years in the league, where he was kind of the guru of offensive line coaching. And I was able to take what I learned from him into any other team that I went, because most coaches are going to, kind of be copycats and, take and what works and then what's successful. I've also had some coaches that, coach completely different, and, trying to learn and differentiate between the two is something that I really kind of struggled with. McNally, he gave me tools to work with. I chose which was the best one, where another coach expected me to be 6'5", 330 pounds and play for the Dallas Cowboys and just move guys out of the way. And Tony Wise, I couldn't do that. Right? I wasn't that type of player. So my skill set didn't really necessarily match his coaching style. So I wasn't a good fit for the offense that we were trying to run with him as the coach. Gilbert, I feel like, is a more give you a tool, you figure it out, and let's work with technique. You have to figure out and create which one is best suited for the guy that you're playing against. Yep. And I really think that Icky and this offensive line is even going to have more consistency because of what he brings as position coach.
Well, I ran into Steve Smith last year, and we were talking, and I asked him, we were talking football and about a bunch of things, but one of the things I did ask him was about Icky, because, Steve's still involved with the Panthers or whatever. And he had a great analogy. He said, DJ, he said, the thing with Icky is he's like a boxer who only knows how to go for the knockout punch and only goes for the attack. When he can't do that, he struggles with having to sit back and wait or whatever, which is exactly what you're talking about. And I think what you said, Ricky's correct. And because Steve did say once it slows down and he realizes that everything's not forward and going for the kill every time, we should see him settle in. And I think we did see that towards the end of the year. Hopefully another offseason and all those things will help him take the next step, because he did show plenty of growth, I thought, in the second half last year once it did slow down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, first, Frank, I think it's hilarious that your offensive line coach was looking at you and upset that you weren't Larry Allen. Why can't you just be Larry Allen, Frank? Come on, man. But moving past that, when you talk about the position coaches, right? And
I didn't say he was a good offensive line coach.
He was just an offensive line coach, right? Yeah. But when you talk about like the different styles, I always look at it, and there's a saying, right? Like, be a palm tree, not an oak tree, right? Because a palm tree can sway in the wind and it has a little bit of flexibility. An oak tree is rigid. When you're teaching the game, right, and you're teaching technique, not every single one of these players is built and composed the same exact way. Not every one of them has the same strengths and weaknesses. But you got to be able to make something out of all of them, right? So you got to be a little bit more fluid with what you want people to do. You have to have more than one technique. You can't just say, hey, this is the way that I'm going to teach you to play offensive line, and you better be good at it or else you're not going to play offensive line. Maybe you won't play for that person, but that doesn't mean that you're not a good player. And a good coach is going to look at you and say, hey, I see good things in there. I want to get the most out of those. Like, how do we get you to your best form as opposed to you being to my best coaching?
Yeah. But before we let you go, I want to touch on two things. Number one, the young defensive ends and just that defensive end room in general, because, last year the Panthers were one of the worst in the league at getting pressure. The quarterback, when Wanham came back, he actually played well, the last, 14 games or 12 games, whatever it was that he was back. Obviously, we spent draft capital in the second and third round on some defensive ends. What's DJ Johnson, he will be back, and he showed a few flashes last year. What do you expect to shake out on the defensive end position? And then how many wins do you think the Panthers get this year? I want to ask everybody that, but before I let you go.
All right. So for the edge rushers, I still think that Pat Jones is going to be the most impactful, I guess is the right word. I don't know if it means statistical count is going to be the highest for him, but I think he's your best 3-down edge player since you got rid of Jadeveon Clowney. He's got the length that Evero covets. He's got the edge setting ability, but he also has a little bit more individual winning technique, I think, as a pass rusher. Now, what's similar between him and DJ Wanham is they're both kind of cleanup artists, is what you could call them. And I don't mean that in like a negative connotation, but neither of them really create their own wins early in a pass rush. You look at their like pass rush win rate percentage and all those deep, nerdy analytical measures. Like, they're not very high on those charts, right? They're not going to be in that upper right quadrant. But what they do is they have an engine, they have a motor, and they don't turn off. They go after guys. They make the dirty, clean up plays if they're available. When Nick Scorton and Princey Umanmielen kind of get their footing underneath them, and I give them 5-6 weeks, man. Like, we were just talking about rookies having to acclimate to the speed, all of the questions that they have to internally answer when they're on the field. There's a lot of things firing at once for these guys, and Nick Scorton's going to be 21 years old. Like, he's just then going to be able to buy a beer when they kick off on the first game, right?
That's right.
Like, there's a lot for him to learn. Princely's going to be 23. He's more of a pass rush specialist coming into the gates. Once they get comfortable, man, I expect to see them making some impact plays in the last half of the season. But Pat Jones and DJ Wanham are going to have to hold down the fort. DJ Johnson's interesting. If he can't show that his pass rush has improved at all and he still makes the roster, look for him to be big time on special teams. And look for him to be in only early downs, because they're not going to keep fooling around with giving him time for the guys that they are trying to develop as pass rushers for their future. If the fourth or the third round reach out of Oregon doesn't show that he, maybe should have stayed a tight end.
I was going to say, they traded up to get him, and he really has not done a whole lot. He did show some flashes last year, has had injury problems as well, but he's a guy that I think if he doesn't have a great camp, like you mentioned, with some of the new depth and pieces they have there, could be a draft casualty or a casualty when it comes to that last day when they make the cuts. So last question, the Panthers right now, if you watch any of these TV shows or if you read any of these articles by analysts around the country, it scares me because the Panthers seem to be the sexy pick right now as to what team is going to be the surprise team, what team is going to win the NFC South, what team is going to, and the Panthers keep coming up again and again and again. And Frank and I have talked about how important it is for a team to learn how to manage expectations. This team has had no expectations. They've been the bottom of the barrel for quite a while now. And we saw some growth the last 10 games of the year, and there's a lot of excitement. We think what looks to be another good offseason on paper. Last year did the offensive line, this year the defensive line. How many games do you think the Panthers win this year? You think they make the playoffs? Do you think they're still a year away from getting there? I mean, the division is certainly pretty wide open. I mean, Tampa's pretty solid up there at the top, but I mean, we should have beat them once last year, and Atlanta is a very similar team to us. I think they had to rebuild their defense, and they did. And then the Saints, if we don't beat the Saints twice, then we're definitely not making the playoffs.
Right. I've been steadfast on this, that I'm going 17-0 until training camp gets underway because that's the right answer, right? Like, there's no reason to give my team losses before I have to. But now that training camp is right around the corner, I will say that I think that a realistic floor for this team, and I mean, honestly, I think this is the lowest that they should look at, is about 7 wins. I think that they should be able to hit 7 wins. I think there was probably 3 to 5 games last season that they should have won. If they could have closed games out, or if they could have made a play late in the last 2 minutes of a game, they should have won some of those games. And some of those games that they should have won were against teams like the Chiefs or the Eagles, right? They knocked the Cardinals out of the playoffs with their win. We saw the offensive production they put up in week 18 against the Falcons. There are a lot of reasons to believe and buy into this team. I am very nervous as well, what you talked about, the national media giving a little bit of recognition, patting us on the butt before we even go out there and make a play. Like, it makes me a little nervous too. But I've also been high on this team and some of the players on this team for a couple years now. And I'm just starting to see all of that look how I expected it to look. So I think the floor is 7. If you wanted my honest opinion, I think they win 10 games, and I think they push for a playoff spot. Managing expectations is important, but there's always a team, right? There's always one of these teams that goes from being not very good. We saw the Commanders last year. We saw the Houston Texans a year prior. They go from not being very good at all. They make a couple of moves, really smart, intentional moves, and all of a sudden they're in there and they're showing that they're someone to be messed with for years to come. If Bryce Young picks up where he left off, if Dave Canales really has the pulse of this team, like I think he does, man, this team seems to really love their head coach. And that, for me, goes a long way, too.
They do. I think the interesting thing is, Frank, the NFL coaches and players always talk about how they break the season into quarters.
Yeah.
And I think the first quarter for the Panthers is going to be huge because it's not going to be easy. They open at Jacksonville, then they go to Arizona, who is much improved. Then they're home against the Falcons, big rival, and then they're at the Patriots, who's much improved. So 3 of the first 4 games on the road, and all 4 games are against good team. Jacksonville obviously is a game that you would hope we could win, but they whooped us the last time we were there. And then in the second quarter, at least you have 3 or 4 games at home, but it's not any easier. The Dolphins, the Cowboys, at the Jets, and home against the Bills. So they've got to at least go 2-2 in that first quarter, I believe. I think Jacksonville is almost a must game because we all also do play well against Arizona, it seems, and have a good track record. But I think they've got to at least get 2 of those first 4.
Yeah, except for 2008. Well, we won't remember that.
We won't talk about that.
We won't talk about that.
Almighty. You had to bring
Ricky, DJ, nice to meet you. This is reality talking over here. Hi.
I didn't get my number yet.
I know that the fandom of all of us want to come through. We start getting excited about all the weapons that we might potentially have, and this player might turn into that player. But the reality of it is, this is still a very, very young team.
It is.
And the reality of it is that it takes time for young players to mature and to, working themselves into being the players we expect them to be. And not only does it take time for the players, it takes time for the coaches to recognize what I can trust in a player, where I can put a player, and what that player can do. With the limited time that we have in training camp, with the limited time that we have in the preseason, with the limited amount of time that they give these players nowadays, it's a lot more difficult to do that preseason. So because of that, I think we're going to win under 7 games. I know the Vegas right now has this at 6.5. The over and under, I think, is -145 to over. So a lot of people would agree that, that 7-win ceiling is probably right where they're going to be. It's -120 to go under. I'm probably leaning the under just because of the youth that this team has, the inexperience that the coaches have with that youth and trying to figure out how to work. I think this team is going to hit stride and have a strong second half of the season, but unfortunately, I still think we're going to fall short in some of those one-score games.
Yeah, and I don't fault you for feeling that way. Like, obviously, that's anyone can look at things and determine how they feel about it individually, right? And you're right. We haven't won more than 5 games in 7 years. So why would you have any kind of confidence to come in and say, no, this is where they make the turn? I have this weird thing, Frank, because you nailed it. The amount of time it takes for a young coach first to find his footing and feel comfortable and know which buttons to push at what time, and then which players he can count on, which ones would go into certain situations, right? And certain situational play calling. This is our offensive play caller as well that he's still figuring out. He only had 1 year of doing it prior to this. But last year, there was this really bizarre thing that happened when they went back to Andy Dalton, and then Dalton had the injury, and then Bryce comes back in. There was almost this mulligan of a season. They were just like, all right, look, this season's so wonky and messed up. None of this counts. None of this is going to matter. We're not going to make the playoffs. We're not doing anything. And when they got a little bit of that tightness off of them, and Bryce came in and he played adequately for the first couple of weeks back in week 8, week 9. He didn't come out and light it up against the Broncos. That was a great defense. But he came back and he played steady, not great. But then once they started to see a little bit more, it seemed like Canales found where he was natural and comfortable. It seemed like some of the offensive players found where they were comfortable. Robert Hunt has done a great job of transforming that offense into an offense that actually believes they have the ability to win. I don't think that our offense has thought that for years. You watched the way they played football. They did not look like a team that even believed in themselves. Last year, I saw a team that believed in themselves. So was that enough of extra time, right? Was that the little bit of juice they needed to kind of get over the hump for training camp being so small and not enough time to kind of gel? Are they gelled enough that when they throw in the T-Mac? Are they gelled enough that when they throw in Bobby Brown and Trayvon Merrick, does that make the big difference?
It comes down to one player and one player only. Probably the most important position in any sport is going to be the quarterback. This team will win, lose, die, survive based on the way he plays. And I think, you talked about pressure and expectations. It's a lot harder because that freezes you up. Now that you have them, how is he going to respond to that? At Alabama, when you have the best, fastest, biggest, strongest players out athleting everybody, it's pretty easy to deliver the ball. But when you're the person that is going to be the reason, I want to root for this kid. I really do. I really want to root for him because he's a good kid. He's a hard worker. He says the right things. He stays out of trouble. He's an undersized guy that has all the – I want to root for him. Yeah. I just need him to show me some consistency so I feel like, we have that diamond in the rough.
Well, the one thing that's going to be interesting this year, and Frank, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, last preseason, Canales decided really not to play any of the players, and he took a lot of heat for it.
In the preseason,
and he took a lot of heat for it.
That's a great question.
And we got off to an awful start. Bryce got off to an awful start, and then we saw what happened. It'll be very interesting to see what he does this year in preseason because I'll be shocked if he doesn't have the starters getting more time in preseason because, like you said, Ricky, they already have a shorter period of time than they used to. He's got new talent that they're trying to work
don't
in.
Change their stripes, my friend.
Yeah, well, right. I will say this about Canales, though. I don't think he's one of those coaches who's going to always feel like he's right and not change.
I will gain a lot of respect if I feel like if he does what you're saying because – it's important for everybody to recognize that my way isn't the only way, right? And understand that I make mistakes and I have to be able to adjust and adapt without telling everybody in the world and losing confidence in what I'm saying. But that would be a huge statement if that happens. I would gain a ton of respect for Canales.
I'll be shocked if we don't see the starters play more in the preseason. I'll be shocked because he's a smart guy and he saw what happened last year when they didn't and how they got up to an awful start. And what is the old saying about being crazy or doing the same thing again and again and again?
Insanity. Insanity.
And I'll be shocked if he didn't have him play more. And to be honest with you, I'm sure Bryce and some of the players probably have had that conversation with him about, hey, look, we need to get more continuity and we need to do it.
Players want to have that conversation. But I think your point's taken.
It'll be interesting. I'm excited.
I'd be very, very surprised if you didn't see Bryce Young play every single preseason game, barring injury. If he's healthy, I think you're going to see him play in every single preseason game.
I think at least a series.
Starters. I think you might see a couple series each game.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see them play until there's a meaningful result. Either way, look, this is a team that's not winning more than 5 games. Why are you trying to save your players to go and lose 11 games a year? Get them out there, get them some experience, let them play. You only got 3 preseason games. And Frank, I think you're right. I think that he is maturing as a coach. And I don't think that this is a guy who has an ego that's going to prevent him from doing the right thing.
I totally agree.
So I do anticipate seeing them play a lot in the preseason.
Ricky, thanks for joining us. Before we let you go, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I always enjoy coming on and chopping it up with you guys. Some of the best football conversation around. But if you want more of me, you're welcome to tune in to Panthers on Tap. We typically do every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. live on YouTube or Twitter. Sometimes it's Thursday night, depending on if one of the guys has a softball game going or something like that. We try to let everyone know ahead of time. Yeah. But, hey, we'll crack a couple of cold beers and talk a little Panthers football, talk a little bit about life. So if you enjoy it, please come and check it out. And then in the offseason, we do Draft Crush, me and my co-host Edgar Salmingo Jr., where we break down all the draft prospects and talk about them. So, which your draft stuff, and I know Frank will agree, was as good as it gets. It was fantastic.
Informative for sure.
And
it'll be interesting to see during the season, how some of these guys who you pointed out in the draft process that you liked and that you were high on.
I'm either going to look really smart or I'm going to look like a giant idiot.
Well, that's no different.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, that's different than any draft analyst, right? It's a hit or miss game.
That's it.
Ricky, thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you, bud.
Thanks, buddy.